Self-mastery is the foundation of true independence, and it reveals itself most clearly when a woman chooses to live alone without boyfriends or external attachments to validate her existence. To live alone is not merely a physical state of being, it is a profound training ground where the heart, the mind, and the body are constantly tested. In the stillness of solitude, there is no one to lean on, no one to distract from inner struggles, no one to take responsibility for what belongs solely to her. This is why self-mastery becomes both necessary and inevitable. When no external partner is there to provide support, a woman begins to cultivate the ability to support herself completely. That journey is not easy, but it is powerful. In the beginning, solitude often feels like silence pressing against the mind. The absence of companionship can awaken fears, doubts, and old wounds that were previously hidden by the noise of relationships. This confrontation is the first step in self-mastery, meeting oneself fully without turning away. When there is no boyfriend to affirm beauty, intelligence, or worth, the woman must learn to affirm herself. She becomes both student and teacher, both challenger and guide. This internal dialogue, once refined, transforms her into someone who is not waiting to be validated, but already rooted in her own value. Discipline grows naturally in this space. Living alone means creating structure where there is none, organizing the day without relying on another's rhythm, and holding oneself accountable. Every action, from rising in the morning to preparing a meal, becomes an exercise in self-governance. A woman learns that discipline is not punishment, but freedom, for in mastering her habits, she frees herself from dependency. She does not wait for encouragement to act. She moves because she has trained herself to move. This is mastery over laziness, mastery over procrastination, mastery over the small voices that whisper to give up. Emotional mastery also takes root. Without a boyfriend to provide comfort during times of sadness or stress, she is compelled to confront her emotions directly. She must learn to sit with grief without fleeing, to embrace loneliness without letting it drown her, and to transform restlessness into creativity. This is not suppression of feeling, but refinement of it. By observing her emotions in solitude, she learns their patterns, their triggers, their rise and fall like tides. Over time, she discovers that emotions are not enemies but signals, not weaknesses but energies that can be redirected. The woman who can master her emotions no longer fears them, and because she no longer fears them, she becomes unshakable in the face of life's unpredictability. Mental mastery emerges as well. In solitude, the mind is often the loudest companion. Thoughts can rush in endlessly, some nostalgic, some fearful, some restless. Without distraction, these thoughts appear raw and unfiltered. Many people escape them through constant relationships, but the woman who lives alone has no such escape. She faces her mind, studies it, and begins to understand it. Through this, she learns to quiet unnecessary chatter and to direct her focus with clarity. Mental strength is built not by avoiding the storm of thought, but by learning to stand calmly at its center. This clarity allows her to see life without distortion and to act with wisdom rather than impulse. Even the body is drawn into this process of mastery. With no one else to share responsibility for health or safety, the woman learns to care for her body as a temple. She trains it, nourishes it, and listens to its needs. In solitude, there is no one to push her forward when she feels tired or uninspired. She must become the one who drives herself. Each act of caring for the body is a reminder that strength is not gifted by others, but cultivated within. This physical self-reliance reinforces the truth that she carries everything she needs within herself. In all these dimensions, discipline, emotion, mind, and body. Self-mastery is not about becoming rigid or cold, but about becoming balanced and whole. It is about understanding that external relationships can be beautiful, but they should never be the source of her identity or stability. By living alone, she experiences firsthand that strength is not something to be borrowed, but something to be built patiently. Solitude becomes her training ground, her temple, her mirror. And as she continues in this path, she discovers layer after layer of inner strength that had always been waiting beneath the surface, revealed only when there was no one else to rely upon. Freedom of choice is one of the most profound powers that a woman living alone without boyfriends can experience. When there is no partner influencing her direction, no relationship pulling her toward compromises, she is left standing fully in her own authority. In that space, she is not guided by someone else's expectations, but by the compass of her own values and desires. Every choice becomes her own, every path a reflection of her independence. This freedom is not just about doing what she wants. It is about discovering who she truly is when her life is not shaped by the presence or demands of another. In relationships, even the healthiest ones, choices are often shared. This can be beautiful, but it can also blur the clarity of individual vision. When a woman lives without such ties, her decisions are sharper, clearer, and deeply personal. She chooses her career without worrying if it aligns with someone else's ambitions. She chooses her home based on her own needs, not the compromise of two different lifestyles. She decides how to spend her time, how to shape her routines, how to prioritize her growth. This complete authorship over her life creates a unique strength, a strength born from the unfiltered freedom to design her own reality. Such freedom of choice also brings responsibility. There is no one to blame when things go wrong, no partner to shift the weight of decisions onto. At first, this can feel heavy, but it is precisely this weight that builds resilience. Each decision, whether it succeeds or fails, teaches her about herself. She learns to trust her instincts, to refine her judgment, and to walk forward without hesitation. This responsibility makes her choices more deliberate, her awareness sharper, her steps more grounded. A woman who has lived this way for long enough develops a confidence that cannot be easily shaken, for she knows that her life is the result of her own decisions, not the compromises of someone else's influence. Freedom of choice also nurtures creativity. When there is no external expectation, the mind opens to explore without limits. A woman alone can reinvent her career, learn new skills, pursue art, travel, or dedicate herself to causes that align with her spirit. She does not have to justify her passions or explain her decisions to a partner who may not understand them. This unleashing of creative freedom allows her to live a life of authenticity where her dreams are not postponed for the sake of relationship dynamics. Every day becomes an opportunity to experiment, to try, to discover, to grow. The energy that might have been spent on compromise is instead directed into creation, innovation, and self-expression. Even in the smallest aspects of daily life, this freedom shows itself. She chooses when to rise and when to rest. She decides what fills her space, what colors her walls, what music fills her rooms, what scents move through her home. These choices may seem ordinary, but together they create an environment that fully reflects her inner world. Her living space becomes an extension of her freedom, a sanctuary untouched by external control. To live this way is to experience a deep alignment between inner desires and outer reality, something that is often diluted when two lives must constantly merge. The freedom of choice also liberates her from traditional timelines. Society often expects women to move through life in predictable stages: relationships, marriage, family. But the woman living alone without boyfriends steps outside of this linear path. She no longer measures her worth by where she stands in relation to these milestones. Instead, she creates her own timeline, her own rhythm, her own season for everything. This is a radical form of freedom because it allows her to honor her individuality without bending to social pressure. She is no longer bound by comparison, no longer pulled into the race of conformity. She can live slow or fast, quiet or bold, structured or spontaneous, all because her choices belong solely to her. There is also spiritual freedom in this way of life. Without a partner shaping her emotional landscape, she has the space to deepen her connection with herself and with the greater forces she believes in. She can choose her spiritual practices without question, whether that means meditation, prayer, reflection, or silence. She can explore philosophies, wisdom traditions, or practices that expand her consciousness, guided only by her own curiosity. This spiritual freedom allows her to form a deep relationship with her own soul, unclouded by external interference. The power of freedom of choice is not only about the external decisions she makes, but also about the internal permission she gives herself. She learns that she does not need approval to change direction, to start anew, or to walk away from what no longer serves her. She becomes the architect of her own destiny, free to design it again and again, as many times as her spirit calls for. Every choice becomes an act of self-expression, every decision a declaration of independence, every step a movement closer to the life that is most true to her nature. Silence and clarity are gifts that unfold in the life of a woman who lives alone without boyfriends. For solitude strips away much of the noise that constantly surrounds and influences human life. In the absence of companionship, the constant dialogue of daily relationships disappears, and what remains is space for reflection, space for listening, space for the deeper truths that are often drowned in chatter. Silence is not merely the absence of sound, it is the absence of external distraction. Within this absence, clarity begins to emerge, allowing her to see her life, her mind, and her emotions with a sharpness that cannot be attained when they are clouded by constant conversation or the influence of another's opinions. The modern world is full of noise, not only the literal sounds of cities, technology, and daily business, but also the subtler noise of expectations, judgments, and comparisons. In relationships, this noise multiplies because two lives merge, each carrying their own patterns, preferences, and demands. When a woman lives alone, she steps back from this merging and begins to encounter herself directly. The silence she experiences in her home is more than physical quiet. It becomes a mirror that reflects her inner state without distortion. In that silence, she hears the subtle tones of her own thoughts, the whispers of her intuition, and the truths that are often silenced in the presence of others. Silence does not come easily at first. For many, it feels uncomfortable, even threatening. When a woman chooses to live without boyfriends, the initial stillness can awaken feelings of loneliness or restlessness. She may long for conversation, for affirmation, for the familiar sound of another's presence. But if she resists the urge to escape, if she sits patiently with the silence, it begins to transform. What once felt empty becomes full. What once felt heavy becomes light. Silence reveals itself as a source of nourishment, a place where clarity can grow like light breaking through clouds. This clarity is not a sudden revelation, but a gradual unfolding. In silence, a woman begins to notice the patterns of her own mind more clearly. She sees which thoughts return again and again, which emotions rise in certain moments, which habits drive her actions. Without external distraction, she cannot hide from these inner movements. Clarity means seeing them as they are, without judgment, without denial. She realizes that some of the beliefs she carried were never truly hers, but echoes of what society or relationships impressed upon her. Through silence, she separates her true voice from the noise of borrowed voices. Silence also sharpens perception. The simple act of drinking tea, walking outside, or watching the sky becomes more vivid when the mind is not crowded by external pressures. The smallest details reveal themselves: shifts in breath, the rhythm of footsteps, the texture of air against the skin. This attentiveness cultivates presence, and presence is clarity in its purest form. A woman living in solitude learns to experience life fully in each moment, not rushing toward the future or dwelling in the past, but seeing clearly what is here and now. Emotional clarity also arises in silence. Without the influence of a boyfriend's moods, opinions, or reactions, a woman sees her emotions without distortion. She notices when sadness arises, and instead of rushing to cover it with conversation, she explores it directly. She notices joy, and instead of sharing it immediately, she feels its depth within herself. This direct encounter with emotion teaches her that feelings are waves. They rise, peak, and fall naturally if allowed to flow. In silence, she learns not to fear them or cling to them, but to understand them. And in this understanding, her emotional world becomes balanced and clear. Clarity extends to her choices as well. In silence, distractions fall away, and she can hear her intuition with greater strength. Decisions that once seemed complicated reveal their answers when seen from the stillness of a quiet mind. The silence becomes her advisor, not because it gives her words, but because it clears away confusion. She learns that clarity is not about overthinking, but about seeing simply and directly. In a life without boyfriends, silence is not a punishment, but a path. It is the quiet ground where clarity grows naturally, where truth is revealed without effort, where she can hear the deepest parts of herself. Through silence, she develops an inner vision that is not clouded by noise, and this vision guides her to walk her path with steadiness and certainty. Inner wealth is the treasure that a woman discovers when she lives alone without boyfriends, for solitude reveals that true abundance is not measured by external possessions or the constant presence of others, but by the richness cultivated within. Society often teaches that wealth is found in material gain or in the validation of relationships. Yet the woman who stands alone learns that there is a deeper kind of prosperity, one that cannot be taken away. Inner wealth is the collection of strength, wisdom, peace, and self-knowledge that grows quietly within her as she lives independently. And it is this wealth that sustains her in ways that no external support could provide. At first, living without a partner may feel like lack rather than wealth. The absence of constant companionship can create an illusion of emptiness, as if something important is missing. Yet, when she looks more closely, she begins to see that solitude gives her space to cultivate resources that are far more valuable than fleeting attention. She learns to generate joy from within, not from compliments or shared moments, but from her own being. She discovers peace not from reassurance, but from her capacity to rest in her own presence. Slowly, the recognition arises that her inner world holds treasures far beyond what external relationships can supply. One form of this wealth is emotional resilience. A woman who lives alone develops the ability to comfort herself, to stabilize herself during storms, and to rise after falling. She no longer depends on a boyfriend's encouragement to keep moving forward. Instead, she builds a storehouse of inner strength that she can draw upon in any moment. This resilience is wealth because it provides stability in an unstable world. She knows that as circumstances may change, people may come and go, but her inner resources remain hers. Another form of inner wealth is creativity. With no external demands shaping her time and energy, she has space to cultivate her own passions. She may write, paint, study, build, or create in ways that fully express who she is. This creativity is wealth because it brings fulfillment that cannot be purchased or replaced. It is the wealth of contribution, the richness of expressing something unique that arises only from her. Each act of creation adds to her inner store, reminding her that she is not empty but overflowing with potential. Wisdom also grows in solitude. Without the constant noise of another's presence, she has the opportunity to reflect, to observe, and to understand life more deeply. She sees patterns in herself, in others, and in the world. Through silence and self-observation, she learns what truly matters and what is illusion. This wisdom is wealth because it guides her choices with clarity, saving her from unnecessary suffering and aligning her with what nourishes her growth. Unlike material possessions, wisdom cannot be lost once gained. It only deepens with experience. Peace of mind is perhaps the most valuable form of inner wealth. The woman living alone without boyfriends learns to find stillness within herself. She does not need constant activity to distract from discomfort or constant reassurance to feel safe. She becomes comfortable with her own company, and in this comfort, peace arises. This peace is wealth because it creates stability in all circumstances. While others chase satisfaction outside themselves, she carries peace wherever she goes, and this quiet abundance makes her rich in the truest sense. There is also the wealth of self-knowledge. In solitude, she learns who she is without the roles and expectations that relationships often impose. She discovers her preferences, her rhythms, her values, and her strengths. She learns how to listen to her intuition and how to trust herself. This self-knowledge is wealth because it empowers her to walk confidently in the world, no longer dependent on others to define her. She knows her worth, and because she knows it deeply, she cannot be easily shaken by external judgment or praise. Living alone also teaches her the wealth of contentment. She realizes that happiness is not about accumulation, but about appreciation. She learns to find joy in small moments, a sunrise, a book, a meal she has prepared for herself, the quiet of her space. This contentment is wealth because it frees her from endless striving. She no longer measures her life by what she lacks, but by what she has cultivated within, and in this way, she discovers that she is never truly poor, even when she owns little. Inner wealth is not visible to the eye, yet it radiates through presence. It is felt in the calm of her voice, in the steadiness of her actions, in the way she moves through the world without desperation. It is not dependent on relationships, possessions, or circumstances, but on the quiet treasures she has gathered within herself. The woman who lives alone without boyfriends learns that she is not deprived but abundant, not lacking but overflowing, because she carries within her the inexhaustible wealth of resilience, creativity, wisdom, peace, and self-knowledge. Unshakable presence is the quality that naturally develops when a woman learns to live alone without boyfriends, for solitude strips away the layers of dependency and reveals a core that is steady, firm, and deeply rooted. Presence is more than simply existing. It is the way energy radiates from within, the way a person holds themselves regardless of circumstance. When a woman is no longer defined by the validation of a partner, when her sense of worth no longer rises and falls according to someone else's affection, she begins to embody a presence that cannot easily be disturbed. This kind of presence is not loud, not forceful, but quiet and undeniable, like a mountain standing in silence, yet commanding respect by its very being. Living alone teaches her to find balance within herself. In relationships, presence often becomes entangled with another's energy. Moods influence moods, words influence thoughts, actions influence emotions. Alone, she learns to steady her own state without leaning on anyone else. She becomes her own anchor, the one who calms herself when troubled, the one who motivates herself when weary, the one who keeps her rhythm steady regardless of the waves around her. This ability to self-regulate strengthens her presence because it makes her less reactive, less easily shaken by what happens outside. She can meet the world with calm because her center is firm. Unshakable presence also grows from the deep self-knowledge cultivated in solitude. A woman who lives without boyfriends has time to explore who she is beneath expectations, roles, and social norms. She learns her values, her priorities, her strengths, and her weaknesses. This self-awareness grounds her. When she knows who she is, she does not need to prove it to others. When she knows her worth, she does not need constant reminders. This groundedness radiates outward as presence. People feel it when they are around her, not because she speaks of her strength, but because her very being communicates it without words. There is also a spiritual dimension to presence. Solitude gives her space to connect with herself on a deeper level, whether through reflection, meditation, or simply being with silence. In this inward turning, she taps into a well of stillness that does not change with external conditions. This stillness infuses her presence with depth, a depth that others sense even if they cannot describe it. It is the kind of presence that makes people pause, that invites respect without demand, that communicates power without aggression. Such presence cannot be manufactured. It can only be born from the long training of being alone and learning to stand steady in one's own company. Emotional stability strengthens this presence further. When she no longer relies on a boyfriend to stabilize her moods, she learns to master her emotions. This does not mean suppressing them, but understanding them, allowing them, and guiding them. A woman who knows her emotions deeply is not thrown off balance by them. She feels anger but is not consumed by it. She feels sadness but does not drown in it. She feels joy but does not cling to it. This emotional balance radiates outward, creating an aura of calm strength that others instinctively recognize. Her unshakable presence also shows in the way she moves through life. She is not desperate for attention, not eager to conform, not afraid of being misunderstood. She walks with quiet confidence because her sense of self does not depend on external approval. This is why such presence commands respect. People may not agree with her choices, but they cannot deny the steadiness she carries. She becomes like a tree with deep roots. Storms may bend her branches, but they cannot uproot her. Living alone also teaches her the power of solitude in public life. She is comfortable entering spaces alone, traveling alone, eating alone, existing without the need for constant company. This comfort with solitude strengthens her presence because it shows that she is not defined by appearances or social expectations. She carries herself with dignity in any setting because she knows she belongs wherever she chooses to stand. Unshakable presence is not about dominating others or proving superiority. It is about embodying such inner steadiness that nothing external can easily disrupt it. The woman who has lived alone without boyfriends learns to cultivate this presence through discipline, reflection, and self-reliance. Each challenge she faces alone, each fear she overcomes, each moment of silence she embraces adds another layer of strength to her being. Over time, she becomes a presence that does not need to be announced, a force that does not need to be declared because it is felt in the calm, steady, unshakable way she exists in the world. The journey of a woman living alone without boyfriends is not a path of emptiness, but one of discovery, growth and profound strength. Through self-mastery, she learns to stand firm in her own discipline and resilience. Through freedom of choice, she shapes her life with authenticity, free from compromise. In silence, she finds clarity that reveals her truest voice, and in that clarity, she learns to navigate life with wisdom. Her solitude becomes a garden where inner wealth flourishes, resilience, creativity, peace, and self-knowledge growing in abundance. And from this garden rises an unshakable presence, a steady force that commands respect without demand, radiating quiet power wherever she walks. The power of her solitude is not the absence of love, but the presence of strength, not the denial of companionship, but the realization of completeness. She discovers that the greatest relationship she can ever build is the one with herself, and in this realization she embodies freedom, depth, and a strength that cannot be moved.